Welcome to Between the Whistles. I'm your host, Joe Chap, and today we will be talking about something that I really love and I love to talk about and enjoy talking about is the Detroit Red Wings. And they did something that I didn't expect. I did not expect them to make a trade. And they did with Jeff Petry coming to the Detroit Red Wings for Gustav Lindstrom and a 2025 fourth round pick. It's a win. It's a win all the way around. Because at one point in the season, we thought that Gustav Lindstrom was going to go to Europe anyways. So because we thought he was going to go to Europe, I didn't even think he would be on the roster at this point. I was pretty shocked when they tendered him and they signed him to a contract ultimately. But I was more I was more prepared for him to go to another team, to another league. I didn't think he'd stay in the NHL, and I didn't think he'd go to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, on the Jeff Petry trade, it's a good trade for the Detroit Red Wings. Let's make no bones about it. When you can get a guy like Jeff Petry, a good defenseman, who's going to help you on the power play, who could potentially help you with your offensive play, and he's not a bad defensive player at all. But when you look at Jeff Petry, like he can help this Red Wings team, and there's a lot of depth. And even if you wanted to look at it in the small circle, and you wanted to look at it how does this help the Detroit Red Wings? Well, number one, if at the very low point, it's going to give you a lot of depth. That's the number one thing. And I think what Steve Yzerman has done this offseason is he's chased after a lot of depth. Because when we watched the Vegas Golden Knights, they were not the most skilled team, I would say. They weren't the most skilled team, but they had a lot of depth. And lines 1 through 4 could really, really hurt you. And their defensive pairings, they went 3 deep. They went 3 pairings deep, and they were a really good defensive team. They were physical. They were talented. They were good with puck possession. They were good at getting the puck out of their zone. And I think when you look at the Detroit Red Wings, like they haven't had the lottery luck that Steve Eisner would have hoped. So they got to look at this a different way, and they got to build this a different way because it's one thing to really wait for these prospects to come up. We're all excited about Simon Edmondson and Marco Casper and Nate Danielson and Sandin Pelika, and there's a lot of great players that are coming down the pike for the Detroit Red Wings. But you can't wait for them that long. I think Eisenman knows that. I think he knows that, it's a time to just give this team what they need, give them something. So like when you eventually do become, if this team does go to the playoffs, let's say they go to the playoffs, okay, they don't win the Stanley Cup, but they go to the playoffs, they get past the first round. Like no one's gonna really be mad at that season, and then you're gonna be adding players into the lineup, as they get more, they get more developed, like your Casper, like your Edmondson. You can add them to the lineup when your team has a little bit of depth and has some talent. So I really look at the way that Steve Yzerman is building this, and I think, he's taken the patient approach as much as he can. Like I really do think that no matter how you slice it, like he's taken the patient approach. But at certain times he has made some under the radar moves, like the trade with Jake Wallman. Like that was an underrated move, and I'm pretty sure that Steve Eisenman thinks that Jake Wallman is maybe your top 4 defensemen. So it's a good thing for the Detroit Red Wings, just to get a guy who could be a depth player. I mean, he's older. You would hope that you would have got him like a couple years earlier, but ultimately this is going to help the Detroit Red Wings with their depth. And you're ultimately going to get a good guy that wants to be here, and that's a big portion of the trade. And I think that's a good way to kind of slice it. I don't look at this as like a big move by any means. I think this is a very solid move. I think it helps the Detroit Red Wings on a multitude of levels, especially on the defensive side, because I mean, if you were to say at the beginning of the offseason, who are you taking? Who would you rather take Jeff Petry or Gustav Lindstrom, I'll take Jeff Petry. You know, I didn't think Gustav Lindstrom would be on this team anyway. So it's a very under the radar move. It leads to me to believe that there could potentially be more moves from Stevie Y. But I just think that, you know, there's a logjam of defensemen. I'm wondering, could there potentially be a move in the future to maybe you move a defenseman out for maybe a forward or something. You never know, and that's something I think Stevie will pursue. You know, he's really been tight to the vest, and he said that, you know, especially before he traded for DeBrincat, that he wasn't really ready to. You know, they're still in a rebuild phase, but ultimately you're seeing a little bit of it that he is trying to make this team better next year. I mean, it's enough of the losing, you know, enough of the losing. They've had a really, you know, they've had a really tough time of, you know, getting lottery luck. You know, they've been one of the league's worst teams, and they ended up with the 5th pick. And Steve Eisner has done a really good job of drafting and developing, and those players will come. But in the meantime, he's saying, look, we gotta go out there and win games, and we gotta kind of follow the Vegas method until these guys get back. You know, these guys get into the big club, and that will come. You know, you're talking about 2 to 3 years, but for the right now, this team is good enough to make a playoff. I really do believe that. They're a better team than they were yesterday, and this Detroit Red Wings team will be pretty damn good come October. So when preseason starts. So training camp starts in a few weeks. So we're gonna have a lot of fun times with the Red Wings up ahead. And I haven't been able to make a lot of Red Wings videos because I've been doing a lot of Lions stuff and Tiger stuff and Michigan State. But don't worry, the Red Wings content is coming. I know a lot of people love the content on the channel. So we're gonna definitely bring that to you on Between the Whistles Detroit. I'm Joe Chapp, and I will see you in the next video as we talk about more Red Wings hockey.